Welcome back to another Real Estate Note Show. I'm your host, Dave Foots. Alongside me, as always, Mr. Nathan Turner. How are you?
Hey, doing really well. How about you, man?
Yeah, man, springtime, like we talked last time, it's exciting time. We're getting warmer weather. We're getting rid of the
Yeah,
snow. I know it's sad for you with skiing. It's kind of going away.
it's getting
Ah,
there. It's getting there.
yeah,
But I get out to the hill as often as I can. We actually get more snow in February, March than we do in January, February, or January and December. So it's all
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Getting all the good snow right now and up in the mountains at least. So
That's
it's good.
awesome. So with the note space right now, we actually acquired 2 loans just last week, which is wonderful. We're trying to deploy a little bit more money out for some other stuff going on. I'm gonna
Yeah,
try hypothecation next week. We'll see how it goes, and we'll
very
report
good.
back. Um, you know, 2 things. We got 2 housekeeping things, and then we wanna hit one thing that we talked about recently. So, first off, like always, bring up the DME for those who have no clue who we
Yeah,
are. We've both been in real estate notes for 10, 15 years plus, but there's an opportunity to connect with others, which is crucial. And
yeah.
that could be the first time you've ever connected with someone in person.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I really found going to Node conferences in the past is
Yep.
I would meet people that I'd spoken to on the phone that I'd never actually met before. We'd actually even done deals and everything,
Yeah.
sent money back and forth, and then for the first time, I meet them in person at a conference.
Yep.
But it's essential to get to a conference. This business is more about relationships than anything else I know, and so it really is crucial that I I totally know it sounds like a pitch coming from a guy who runs a conference, but I can tell you in all honesty, that is how my business has grown. Is just by going to conferences and talking to people and just really getting
Yeah.
in the know and getting in those kind of relationships with people as we go. But
Absolutely. So
super excited for this year. We've got some awesome topics. It's going to be really fun, uh, really interesting stuff that
May
I can't
1st and
wait to
May
get into.
2nd, guys, get down there, get flight down there, get your ticket, DME, Diversified
Yeah,
Mortgage Expo. We'll both be
yeah,
there, enjoying ourselves, networking. And if you know us, please feel free to come up and say hello. Um,
yeah,
we always love meeting people and share some feedback. One other thing we got going on is a partner of mine. We started up a way to people in the real estate space are tinkering with AI and automation. And sometimes we run into a lot of technical people who want to help us with AI, but they don't know anything about real
hmm
estate. So
hmm
one of the things that most people know about me is I love automations. I love playing with it. I do a lot with AI behind the scenes that most people never heard of, right? But I also understand there's a lot of people who are very new at AI and are really curious about how it can benefit their business. So
yeah,
we wanted to help from that point of view. We started a once a week call where we go over a solve a problem, where we take a real life situation and we solve it with AI assistance to do that. And then we have a full loop. But what we more importantly do is we take mastermind group of people and put them in a position where they're in 30 days, their business is transformed. Because not only do they use AI, they understand how to use AI, they understand what to do with AI. Because a lot of times you don't even know how to get started. What do you ask? What do you do? And that feature is so important for you because if you don't, you will be left behind. It's just
yeah,
AI is transforming the world right now. And if you say, well, I'm gonna put it off, I'm telling you right now, all you have to know is a little bit to be super, super productive in your
yeah,
investment business. You don't got to be an expert. A lot of times the technical people just are too technical. They just don't get the real estate side, right?
yeah.
We've done take text, turn into spreadsheets and do research with AI, things that a year or 2 ago were not available, and now today's, it's simple. So if you are
Yeah.
interested, jkpholdings.com/AI-mastermind. All right. With that,
Awesome.
I wanted to bring up one of the things that Nathan and I love to do is we love to talk to people who have lots of experience, knowledge, strategies, strategies and strategies, right? We want to know something about someone who's made mistakes and stories, right?
Yeah.
Nathan, I mean, we first got into this stuff. We didn't know anybody. We didn't learn anything. And today, we know a lot of people, and the best people we connect with are the people who have the same experience, but totally different experience at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, and we both, you know, aside from the real estate or aside from the note experience, both of us have done real estate
Yes.
as well. And so it's not like we don't know anything. We've been doing this long enough that we've got, a few experiences under our belt, but there are people in the business that have been doing this far longer than we have and
Yeah.
have had all kinds of different experiences. And that's
Yes.
the sharing of those experiences is what helps us all learn and grow together. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk to our guest today.
Yeah. Our guest today is going to be traumatic, right? He talks about stuff that you probably have heard before, but he tells you from his point of view. He has over 30 years of experience, guys, like, and ladies. But this is traumatic, right? Because of the fact that 30 years and it was do it your own self, bootstrapped on, make mistakes, learn from it. And until recently, really wasn't doing any kind of education because he was doing the game until he got
Yeah.
pushed over the edge and said, listen, can you help? And he did. So we're gonna bring him into Shane. Thank you so much for joining us, man. It was a pleasure meeting you a couple weeks ago and talking. Let's dump into this thing, man. What is your how'd you get into real estate? And tell us your entrance into this whole fun game of investing.
Well, thank you guys. First and foremost, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that, and it's an honor to be on, and I can't wait to get going.
Yeah.
But I started in real estate, actually in the manufactured housing industry in mobile homes, and I was selling RVs when my wife and I got married in '94. I sold an RV to a gentleman, and he just liked me, and he said, "You need to meet my brother-in-law. I think you'd enjoy that," because I was selling RVs in Colorado, and it's you store your nuts over the summertime because winter's, famine time in the RV business in Colorado. And I'd earned my vacation. I'd been there for a year, and I called his brother-in-law, and it was south of us. It was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he had a manufactured housing dealership. And he said, "Why don't you take your vacation and come down and work for me for a week?"
Hmm.
And so I did. We we loved the mountains of Colorado and loved where we were at, but young married couple, we didn't have kids yet, and went down there and worked for him for a week, and on paper made $19,000. And I'm
Wow.
like, I looked at my wife, I said, "We're moving." And now, it ended up being about half that, because there's, turn downs and financing and things like that. But so I kind of got my start in the housing industry, if you will, in the manufactured housing industry.
Wow.
And I'm a Native American, Choctaw Indian. And so that area down there, there's Indian reservations everywhere. And so that kind of became my forte, was helping the different tribes, excuse me, helping the different tribes get homes. On the
Yeah.
Indian reservation, you can't own your land. So manufactured housing is about the only way, chattel loans.
Hmm.
And so I started working down that path. And then from a financing standpoint, just had a lot of these turn downs. But
Yep.
I started studying the credit instead of the credit scores. And these people paid their bills. They
Yeah.
just didn't pay regularly. There was a lot of late payments, and it drove the
Mhm.
score down, but everything's paid.
Yeah.
And so I really started whining and dining the lenders and saying, "Guys, you're going to get paid. You're going to make late fees. Let's get
Yeah.
loans approved." And so I had a lot of success
Mhm.
on the Hickory Apache tribe, Navajo. They ended up transferring me to the Four Corners area, which is, I dealt in Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico, and
Mhm.
that was just far more tribes. And so the financing side of it is what really intrigued me. And I got several lenders, national lenders, to be able to buy into to helping these people get homes. People living in mud huts, hogans,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's still there today. It's
Mhm.
still on these reservations. So that's really how I got my start.
Wow.
And you can say real estate, really it's housing.
Yep.
Mhm.
And before I was married, I was in, the construction industry for a long time. So I'd been around that side of it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Amazing. Did you buy any courses back then?
I did. I bought the Carlton Sheets course.
Never heard of it.
And it sat on my shelf in the cellophane in my closet for probably a year. And back then it was cassette tapes. I
Yeah.
think And so I dug it out and started listening to it, and it made some sense to me, and it was still some time. But the industry I was in, so that was my first taste of, outside of an employee.
Hmm.
The dealership I worked for traded for a mobile home, and they sent me out to look at it and take
Mm.
pictures and all that. And if you guys understand, when you take something on trade, let's say they're buying a house for 30 grand. Well, if you mark it up 35 grand, you can give them $5,000 down payment and you're still getting your $30,000. It's called an over allowance. Well, that's what they did. They didn't want this mobile home. But we had to get it off the lot. And I said, well, I'll buy it. And they sold it to me for $100.
Wow.
And I ended up getting it moved. That cost me about $500 or $600. Put it on a lot. My wife and I, she was pregnant, and and our son's 30 years old now, so it's easy to remember how long I've been doing this, right? So, but we took our weekends and evenings and worked on this mobile home, spent about another $3,000 and sold it for $19,000. And
Nice.
I was hooked. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's what we want to do.
That's the
So really, I
stuff.
started doing in mobile homes.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
then I started seeking other education and things like that. And I know everybody's probably heard of Ron LeGrand. He's been
Hmm.
around forever.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so I've been to all his courses back in the day and just started doing real estate deals.
Wow. You had a
Good for
really
you.
good
That's
start.
awesome.
You had a great start. I don't think all of us can say how good of a start we had, but it sounded like you really got the good taste and success. The worst thing could have happened. You lost money in that deal and it went south. That would have been really terrible. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So, give us some feedback. Could you do the same tactics today if you started all over?
I've been out of the manufactured housing industry for a long time, but in any sort of business, right, we're taught to buy low and sell high.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what the business is. And so, can you do that in real estate? Absolutely, you can. There is a ton of competition out there right now,
Hmm.
wholesaling, and, there's so many, there's AIs that you were talking about in your intro, that'll send out, 500 letters of intent every single day to realtors, and they're getting bombarded. So I would say that the competition, and I hate to even use the word competition because there's so many amateurs out there, but the competition is stiff, and you do have to stand out. So
Yeah.
can you do that today? You can.
Hmm.
Is it tougher? I believe that it is, and that's why I believe that education is so important. I think
Yeah.
that you need to arm yourself with every tool that you can, including AI,
Hmm.
and just give yourself a leg up.
Yeah.
Um,
That's great. Man, that's really cool. So I drove down with my family in 95 down to New Mexico. So we were driving right by you right when you were getting your start.
So, what'd you do next after mobile homes? Since you're not in it any longer, what was your next step?
Well, so in manufactured housing, the guy that I went to work for initially, I only worked there for about 2 months. He was not a good. He wasn't an honorable businessman. He did a lot of things. He had an office that were manufacturing tax returns and doing things like that. And
Oof.
I'm like, as soon as I found that out, I'm like, I got to go. And I actually went to work uh, to with his next door neighbor,
Mhm.
the people that right next door, and
Mhm.
they hired me. They um, transferred me to that Four Corners area. I ended up managing a couple of stores for them, and they transferred me back to Texas, where close to where we came from,
Mhm.
before my wife and I even got married. And I worked for them for about another year and opened my own dealership. And then we started doing, and I had a backer, somebody that came to me and was like, you're doing well over here for these guys. They're making all the money. Why don't you make it for yourself and I'll back you? And so that's what we did. And I
Mhm.
owned that dealership until 99, actually 2000,
Yep.
because the gentleman that I sold to wanted to wait to close until Y2K was over with, because so we had it contracted in 99, but we closed, early January after after we made sure the world didn't implode. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Oh my
We were telling
goodness.
our kids about that recently, and they're like, why? Why was it such a big deal? It's a long story.
it's a
Anyway.
long story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I ended up opening up. I didn't know what I was going to do, but the one thing that the manufactured housing industry did, and I think this is actually, I wasn't even thinking about this, but that industry imploded itself
Yep.
with loose lending practices.
Mm.
Blow fog on a mirror, you get a loan for, a home, low
Mhm.
down payments, no down payments. And I had a mentor, a friend of mine that I met in the industry that had been doing it for 40 years. And when I sold my dealership, he told me, he said, get out. And
Mm.
I kind of felt it coming. And the the way that I sold my dealership was somebody called me, actually meaning to call my competitor down the street and ask for him. And of course, I think it's a customer. We're going to try to flip him to get him in the door. And he said, "Oh, I'm thinking about buying." And I just blurted it out. I said, "Well, my dealership's for sale." And that's how I found my buyer on that just complete
Wow.
happenstance. But
Mm.
so I didn't really know what I was going to do when I sold that dealership. I started a mortgage company,
What year was this about?
and 2000,
Okay. Yeah.
and um, had
Good
a
time to start.
construction background. Well, the foreclosure crisis that we saw in 2008
Yeah.
happened in 2000, 2001 in the manufactured housing industry.
Oh, okay.
And
Wow, I
I
didn't
was
know that.
down in the Houston area,
Uh-huh.
and the lenders had thousands of mobile homes on repossessions
Huh.
in mobile home parks. They were towing them in. They had lots everywhere. The industry died. The people I sold to went out of business in like 9 months. It was
Wow.
terrible for them. But um, I had a friend, one of the lenders. He's like, "We're looking for somebody to rehab and remodel." And I had some crews because we did some land home deals and stuff like that, and they weren't busy anymore.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I was like, "Well, let us remodel." We went and bid a couple jobs, and we were way too high for them.
Sure.
And so the what we did, he gave us some bids of the winning contractors. So he'd say, "You need to get your prices in line with this, right?" And so I ended up getting a partner. It was a strange story. My son was friends with this kid at school. His parents and we all went to the same church. His dad was in the manufactured housing industry, sold like a month before me. And so that was kind of
Oh,
he and I ended up partnering together in
Mm.
this rehab business because he had crews as well. And we started rehabbing mobile homes for the lenders. And it's definitely a volume play. There was
Mhm.
no, you didn't make a ton of money on each one, but all the manufactured housing dealers were going out of business. And so we started warehousing and buying all the parts, wallboard and stainless steel sinks and
huge
ceiling
demand
fans. And
though. Huge demand, I'm
Mhm.
sure.
I bought a truckload of Casablanca ceiling fans for $1 a piece. And
Wow.
I had to buy the whole 18 wheeler load. Doorknobs, faucets, cabinets, everything that's built in a mobile home. And
Mhm.
so we made our money in volume. And so we were doing 30 to 50 rehabs a month. And ours,
Wow.
ours were selling better than anybody else's. We just figured it out. A lot of our
Uh-huh.
crew members figured it out, and we warehoused all those parts. So we made our money on volume. It
Hmm.
was, and so that was, definitely not real estate, but rehabbing manufactured homes, and they were
Yep.
selling, and we bought some ourselves and started
Mhm.
flipping those. And then once the lenders stopped paying, um, we kind of saw the writing on the wall. And again, I had friends at the lenders, and they're saying, some of the contractors aren't getting paid. So we would still go bid some jobs. We just wouldn't accept them because we were, it took us 30 days to get paid anyway. And that was beginning to stretch to 60 and
Yep.
90. And we ended up, I think there
Mhm.
was one invoice for like $5,500. It was small that we got stuck with that we never got paid on, but we
Mm.
kind of exited out of that. And I focused on the mortgage business for a while. And the reason I got in the mortgage business was to control my real estate deals. It wasn't to get into the mortgage business, but that ended up being, fairly lucrative. But I saw the crash coming because I saw the same loose lending practices during the subprime meltdown.
You have the
I
mirror.
saw leading up to it. And in
Yeah.
fact, my company, we did a lot of subprime loans.
Sure. Everyone did.
Yeah, that's
So
where the money was at.
So what made you transition to mortgages and lending? What made that transition happen for you?
I would say that, the subprime helped out a lot. But at the end of the day, I wanted to control my real estate deals. We started buying and flipping and finding buyers and doing credit repair and all of that. And so we were rehabbing our own. We'd moved over into into stick-built homes. And we were buying and flipping those homes. And so really all we did was fix and flip. I did some wholesale deals, but if I'm going to go through the trouble to find a wholesale deal, I'm going to make all the money on it. I'm not going to wholesale it. I mean, we had the crews too. I think that, that's a big differentiation.
So now you went from rehabbing it to buying it, fixing it, and then selling on terms.
No, I was financing them through my mobile home, or through my mortgage company.
Gotcha.
Because I had the ability to get them qualified. And back then we could do quick rescores. There were all sorts of tips and tricks and everything that you could do to help somebody get financed. And so, we just, we did everything that we could. And, you could fix somebody's credit in a week back then.
Wow.
We called it a quick rescore. And I think that's, there's some of that today. But, yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing is just getting people financed. But then when the 07, 08 came around, remember I told you they transferred us to Texas, and that was in 98. My wife was pregnant. It was in 97, mid 97. I ended up going back from the Four Corners area back to Texas.
Sure.
And we were north of Houston. And so that was where we were at that time. And that's where the mortgage company was and all of that. And so repeat the question again. I'm sorry.
So I'm curious how you got into the other side of this, because most of your time, most of the proceeds you've made has been on the other side of this, not just selling and getting a mortgage person. You've gotten into a whole new angle or avenue over the last 15, 20 years since the crisis.
Yeah, I would, the crisis, I saw it coming better than most just because I lived in the manufactured housing industry. I saw what they were doing and I felt it coming. And my wife and I in 01 set a 5-year goal to get back to Colorado. It's where we moved from Texas to Colorado, when we first got married and wanted to get back here, and so we set that goal. And when 06 started rolling around, my business was killing it. And I told my wife, I said, one more year, because we wanted to move while our kids were still young enough to
And when you say
do their
killing,
high school sports.
when you say killing, you were buying, fixing it, and then having them being financed by a bank.
Yes. Yeah. We were, and the mortgage company was doing well as
Sure.
well.
Yeah.
And I ended up selling that in 07. And we sold our house in March of 07. I sold the business like in January of 07, the mortgage company.
Yeah.
And we leased our house back until the kids got out of school in May, and we moved to Colorado. And
That's perfect timing. Yeah.
yeah, I remember it was late June of 2007. And the first time I ever heard the term subprime meltdown was on the radio while we were moving from Texas to Colorado. And that was the beginning. And of course, then came the credit crunch and everything like that. And I actually was going to start teaching my strategy because I had already started doing these reverse wraps. And I was going to teach that up here in Colorado, but the industry imploded. So I just started doing sub 2 because there's so many houses for sale. So I started doing a lot more sub 2 and seller financing and creating notes and wraps. And the trouble back then is nobody had money.
Mhm.
10% down payment was about all you could get. Over the years, I do deals now, it's 20% down, and we obtain the house and sell to our buyers with seller financing. But that's kind of the evolution, if you will.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, talk about touching on all the different parts, manufacturer, going from that to lending to
Rehabbing,
buying
everything.
and rehabbing, like all the points. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's
Every tool in the
love the
toolbox.
experience.
Financing is I think the most important component, right?
Yeah.
Without financing, it's hard from an investor standpoint or
Yep.
from a home buyer standpoint. If you don't have that, you don't have a deal.
That's
And
true.
Yeah.
so what I attempted to do also was wine and dine the lenders in Texas, the way I did in the Four Corners area and the Indian reservations, but the story wasn't the same.
Mhm.
These people paid their bills. It's just
Yeah.
like, it's like going to town and going to the trading post, 3 times a year. You catch up on all your bills, and that's just the way they lived.
Mhm.
But they paid everything. Bad credit when we got down to Texas, you can't garnish wages in Texas, a totally different story. So fighting with the lenders down there and trying to get them to buy your deals was
Yeah.
not going to happen.
So-
It
Yeah.
worked in one area.
So we're going to fast forward here,
Mhm.
right? So I know that you have the ultimate strategy.com site. That's probably portion of this. Tell us more about the ultimate strategy that you developed, not by I want to teach it, by just living it and designing it, and it worked for you, and you are now sharing it with others. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the ultimate strategy, in a nutshell, I call it the ultimate strategy is the name of my company, but it was the name of what I did for a long time. And I've changed the name of it to the reverse wrap because it just makes more sense. And the reason I call it the reverse wrap is because in the real estate investment community, you've got so many people out there just trying to buy houses. And especially in the subject to market, there's a lot of that going on right
Yep.
now. But there's a lot of what I call victims of people that deed their house over to someone and they're not getting payments made because you got to have a buyer. And
Mhm.
so what I do with that is I focus on finding that buyer first. The buyer with 20% down, a buyer that has income but can't qualify for traditional financing for whatever reason. Sometimes it's,
Yep.
proof of income because of business owners. Sometimes it is credit. Sometimes it's an I-10 buyer. They're from outside the United States and they're moving here and many other things. If you're one payment behind on a student loan, you cannot get a mortgage. If you've got a
Mhm.
tax lien and you're making payments on it, you can't get a mortgage.
Yep.
If you filed bankruptcy in the last 3 years, you can't get a mortgage.
Mhm.
And what I noticed is these things that happen to people, we've got I think a broken credit system and a broken mortgage system. And you can fall ill and miss
Yep.
payments for 3 months and get well, but you got to suffer the consequences of that for 7 to 10 years. That's a
Right.
broken system.
Yeah,
It can
3
happen to you
months kills it.
overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And that's
so-
just from an illness.
Most people
Yeah.
understand the wrap world, right? They get the house, they find the seller, they take over the payments to the sub two world, right? And then they wrap that with a brand new buyer that they have to go find. And sometimes it takes them 2, 3, 4 months to find the buyer. And they find a buyer, and sometimes the doesn't have the money, doesn't have the problems. And there are a lot of people trying that method. And we had Dan Diaz on 2.5, 3 years ago. And
Mhm.
I like his strategy. That methodology makes sense to me. Once you have a buyer, you have the money and the finances to get this thing
Yeah.
started. Now you go
That-
and find a
that's the-
property.
You're exactly right. And so when you have a buyer and I know how to attract these buyers because I've been doing it for a long time,
Sure.
where they seek me out and they've got 20% down. They have the income, the ability to make the payments on a home. And so we do a debt to income calculation and make sure we know what they can afford.
Yep.
And we commit them to us. I've got a home buyer presentation that locks them to me like glue. They don't want to do business with anybody else once they sit through my home buyer's presentation. you're the guy, we want to buy a house, and they're stuck to me. And so we go through the process, and really they identify the house. It's not me. And then we acquire the home and sell it to them with seller financing.
So let's break
We
that down a
know how
little bit.
much.
Let's break that down for a minute, right, Nathan? So we have a
Yeah.
buyer. We pre-approve them for a certain amount of money. We
Yes.
take that buyer and say, go shopping.
Yep.
They go and find housing because they don't have financing. So you're doing it like a traditional bank would, right? The buyer goes pre-approved. They talk to their agent. The agent says, great, you're pre-approved for 300. They then go shopping. But if they can't go get the pre-approval, they're in a bad spot. So then they go and they find the house. You go through the same process a bank would do, and then you provide the funding for them to buy that house.
That's absolutely correct. And the nice thing about it, from an investor standpoint, the home buyer presentation sets my buyers up that when we find the house, where does the earnest money come from? I don't have to place it.
Yeah.
It comes from my buyer. I have their down payment in house 3 days before the closing.
Whoa.
The house is
Yeah.
pre-sold. They move in the same day. We close the same day. I close, they close. Same day. They move in the house, so there's no vacancy. There's no insurance, utilities. There's none of the other things, expenses that you have to worry about from what I call a transaction engineer. That's what we're doing. We're shuffling paper, right? But it's simple, but it's around homes.
So when you
So-
do this though, okay, Nathan, go ahead.
I'm curious, and I'm sure this is a question a lot of people have, is why are these people needing to get financing from you? Why can't they just go to a traditional bank? Are these
Well-
like the dregs of society? These are the guys that
Absolutely not.
banks hate?
Absolutely not.
Tell us
No.
about that.
First of all, 20% down. Here's what I've noticed over the years. There's three components that stick people into a home where they're not going to let it go. And those three components are in the home of their choice, right? Because they can go find seller financing, but it's usually not the home of their choice.
Yeah.
But that's a very important key. Equity, 20% down is equity, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said three. And the income to support the payments. If
Right.
they have those three components, you got a secure deal. And I don't care what the bank says.
Sure.
They're not right. I've seen it too many times. I've closed over 1,300 deals in my career. And that includes, that's from manufactured housing in the mortgage industry. That's everything that I've done. And I really quit counting several years ago. So, but those three components, if you have that, you've got a good tenant. And to me, 20% down is your down payment. Is your credit.
Yeah.
I really don't care that they had an illness that put them behind on their payments, or they lost a job, or they had a divorce, or the things like that happen to people. It's just life, man.
Bad things happen to good
And
people.
Yeah.
every single day. And 7 to 10 years to me, that right there just shows you it's a broken system. They can punish you for that period of time for something that happens, a car wreck in the blink of an eye, right? Anything like that. And that's just, it's not right.
Yeah.
So,
No, totally agree.
We have our buyer, we double close the deal, right? You're providing the funding, you're becoming their bank, right? What happens now? A lot of wrap buyers and sub 2 buyers now have to fix the house up. They have to carry the debt for 2 months. Then they come to us and say, guys, can you give me a loan for 30 grand? I'm going to put you in second position. And it becomes really dirty. It becomes messy where they miss the key point here. It's not the house. It's the borrower. So when you do the borrower situation, you solve the biggest equation of the whole thing is who's going to buy the property. And now what I need to talk about on other shows is when you do a sub 2 wrap, that buyer has one property to pick from. If you have 3 or 4 or 5, they have 5 of everything out there. Where if you work with the buyer first, now you give the buyer an opportunity to go shopping, just like the bank does.
I know what they can afford.
Yeah.
I know what school district they want to be in, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, mother-in-law quarters, whatever their situation is, the home buyer presentation and the process that I put them through identifies that. And we know exactly what we're looking for. So when we get it, it's a pre-sold house. I don't make the commitment or the offer unless my buyer has seen it and says, that's the house. and we're
Mhm.
we're full bore right then. We
Yeah.
we go, and
Yeah.
No,
it
that's
just
brilliant.
works.
So
Yep.
And it's so much easier. I can tell you
Definitely.
this: I can't imagine being out there just looking, searching for wholesale deals and sub two deals all day long in this climate. I would do it because it's good money and I enjoy it, and helping people get out of homes is just as good a solid a service as helping somebody get into homes,
yeah.
Mhm.
Now you
right?
have no seller though that comes back and says you screwed me. You have no seller come back a year or two going, "Are you paying my bills? Are you paying that sub two situation is dangerous?" Or if they want to go buy another house, they can't when they're sub two. They're stuck. They have this debt on their book still that never transfers. Here, you're doing traditional real estate and just supplementing the bank. What kind of rates are you typically? What's the financing look like for these buyers? Are you
So it's a
what are you
it's a
charging?
little bit different on every deal, but single digit rate, 30-year fixed, no balloon payments. That's what we do. And
Okay.
so, is there an occasion where I'll take somebody with 15% down? You bet.
Mhm.
And so there's a little bit of a rate hit on that. If they don't have the money for closing costs and we go to roll that in, and obviously the investors want a little bit more. The higher the risk, the higher the interest rate,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
The lower. So that's just the way it works, right? And you
Mhm.
guys are in the note business, so you understand that
Yeah.
completely.
Yep. Yep.
And so,
So are you doing 3% mortgages? Are you doing three and a
we are not.
half?
No, we don't do anything close to market interest rates,
You
right? So
shouldn't.
we're no these, and I'll tell you this, that's I sell against lease options, and if your listeners do lease options, I sell against them because I think it's a risky investment for anything with 20% down. You're not going to get 20% down on a lease option
Nathan, you listen to this? See
because
this?
Yeah. Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens? What happens if your buyer files bankruptcy, or excuse me, your seller files bankruptcy or has a divorce or
Yeah.
something like that, and they've got 20% cash into that, a little bit more than a security deposit or something like that. Lease options are perfectly fine, except in Texas, right? And
Yep.
and there's a few places you can't do them, but
Yep.
for the most part, I sell against that. Everybody gets a deed in their name.
Mm.
The importance of a high down payment is the fact that they can deduct that interest from their taxes. That's very, very important. You can't get the kind of payments that we get and cash flow that we get on a lease payment because it's hard for them to swallow
Yeah.
that bill every single month and not get something back for
I
it. And
got
so being able,
Right.
3 notes in my
Mhm.
inbox this morning from sellers who created 4 to 6.2% rate notes. Why are you creating a
Yeah.
note at 4% in today's world? And most of the
Yeah.
answers, Shane, I get is, "Well, that's what the buyer can afford." And my answer is, "Then you found the wrong buyer."
get a different buyer. It's that simple, guys. I'll tell you this, and there's a friend of mine that does a lot of contract work with Zillow on the
Mhm.
technical side. They have 7,000 applications a day that are turned down because you apply for a mortgage on Zillow now, right? 7,000 a day with 20% down that are turned
Wow.
down.
Wow.
That's
Oh.
the market in the United States. So I've never had a problem finding somebody with 20% down, and they gladly pay more interest because you know what the mortgage broker's telling them: wait a couple of years, go do this,
I
go do
want it
that. Well, the
I
house
want
is
it
going to go up
now.
far more in 2 years than the
Yes.
additional interest that they're going to pay, and they recognize that. And if they don't, okay, no,
And
no hard
and they wanna
feelings.
start a family, right? They wanna move their
Yeah.
kids. They start a new job. They can't put anything on hold for 3, 6, 3 years, 2 years, doesn't matter what it is. And I think
They
people
Or
want
want
they're
some.
security. That's what
yeah.
they
Yes.
want. They want
Or
security. They want to make sure that their landlord is not going to come and say, "Hey, my kids are going to move back in the house, and you got
exactly.
to move," and
Yep.
that kind of stuff. People
Yeah.
want security, and they'll pay a premium for it. And we don't, we
Yeah.
make money, and we're full disclosure all the way through.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what they're going to get from day one,
Yeah.
and transparency is the best business model, right?
Yeah. I mean, as a self-employed person, I mean, I know how difficult it is to go to the bank and to get them to look at me in the right light. They don't understand the kind of income that I'm bringing in, or they at least don't acknowledge it the same way that it was as if it
Well, let
was a
me see your
government
tax
employee
returns,
could.
and then yeah, okay. Well,
Yeah.
That
you
doesn't
make
mean
fifty
anything,
thousand dollars a year. Yeah, well,
Right,
not
exactly.
really. I'm
Yeah.
paying
And
five thousand
they
dollars a month in
cannot get their
rent.
heads around that. So a
Yes.
service like this is invaluable, where you're
Yeah.
offering it. And then am I willing to pay a premium for that? Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
that's the way I can get it done.
Yeah.
Well, guys, and it's not all about money. I can't tell you how many tears have been shed from
Yes.
families, including my own, because they're able to get into a home and what I say,
You gave him an
come.
opportunity to be a
That's right.
homeowner,
Yeah,
right? So
that's
Shane,
I
huge.
tell them become a homeowner today, not
Yeah,
someday.
yes,
yeah.
I love the pitch. I love it. So all these people out here doing rap notes and sub twos, it gets dirty quickly, right? It's not clean. I get you're making money doing it, guys. Here's another thing. He's underwriting the borrower. That is by far the biggest thing. Make sure we do. We talk about this on all the shows. Underwrite that borrower. Make sure they have ability to repay that loan. You don't want anything else. You're not.
If you don't, it's just you might make a few bucks today, but
Yep.
it's going to be a headache and cost you later. I promise.
Yeah, and you're not going
Absolutely.
to sell that loan. It's just you won't the secondary market. You can't hypothecate against it. You can't sell partials on it. It becomes a dirty loan, and you can't just fix it day 5. It doesn't get fixed that way. You have to back up and start over. And we get
Mhm,
emotional about this because we see this day in day out from
mhm.
people who listen to our show and see us in social media and come to conferences. So, guys, if you're doing this kind of stuff, we're doing this not to say you're doing a bad job. We're showing you what you could be doing differently, right? And you can hook up with Shane after this. We have his bio in the link below. Hook up with Shane, ask him questions how he does it. Maybe you may say, well, I can't find buyers. Maybe you're doing the wrong path. Shane can help, right? So we're going to
Mhm.
link his stuff in the bio. Please feel free to reach out to it. Shane, are you charging points to these borrowers at all?
So I do double closes on everything that I do.
Yeah.
So we make our spread on the price difference on the house in some cases, the difference on the interest rate in some cases, and a combination in some cases. So it's a little bit different in each one of them.
Okay.
Okay.
But what you just said, David, about finding the buyer, it is far more difficult to find the perfect buyer for a single home than it is to go out and find a buyer and help them get into their dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's far more, it's
I
far
would
harder.
I would say the biggest hurdle with it is find the financing to do it, right? Find the money to be able to do things. That's probably the hardest part where how do I come up with $500,000 to go buy 3 homes for a buyer? How would you walk someone through the first, month of doing this? How would they do that?
Well, it's all focus on the buyer, right? We give and that's what I teach is focus on that buyer, focus on their dreams, focus on their debt to income ratio, what they can afford, guide them in the right direction, because that's what we're doing, right? And everybody wants champagne on a beer budget. Everybody does. But at the end of the day, it's that security that means everything to a family. And by the way, it means more to the females in the family than it does the males.
Mm,
Once
Mhm,
they have that security,
mhm,
life is good. And like they say, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy,
this is
right?
true.
mhm,
And you that security just means everything to these folks. And when you get somebody into a home that it may not be, the champagne that they were wanting in the beginning, but I can tell you 100% of the time, and I mean it, the house they end up in, that we are so happy that this is the house that we ended up, this is the house that we got. And the reason why is because we don't force our clients to refinance. But if
mhm,
they do go refinance, they cut their payment in half, especially when we had interest rates in the 3s and 4s. They can go cut their payment in half. And if you're pushing your debt to income ratio at a higher interest rate, and then all of a sudden you go and you do the work that it takes and refinance out of that thing in a couple of years, and you
mhm.
get that lower house payment,
Mm,
your lifestyle is so much better than
yeah.
it is going, getting a good interest rate and maxing out your DTI from day one. And these people, they're just excited to get into a home.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
great.
if they have no upside, in other words, they already got a great interest rate, I would say buy less house. That's what I would say. Don't
So
push your debt to income ratio so high.
we've had a
Yeah.
couple people on our show talk about this, and this is a crucial point. You're not expecting people to hold a whatever interest rate. Let's say it's 12 for the hell of it, right? A 12% interest rate for 30 years. You're hoping in 2, 3, 5, 6 years, they're gonna probably refinance because why wouldn't they? They get stable
We help
enough,
them with that too.
right?
So
Because
one
you're
thing
not,
I
but
do,
you're not planning on holding it for 30 years. That's not the
I never
goal.
have. I never have. The
Right.
longest I think I've held anything is 48 months. I mean, the
Wow.
longest. But they were a 30-year term.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They can refinance or they can sell, you know,
Hmm.
So guys,
sell and
if you
take their
can
equity.
see the fact that, well, I'm charging 9, 10, 11, they can't afford that. Listen, they only have to afford it for a period of time where they can go get a bank loan or
Can they
sell it.
afford the house going up in $100,000 in 2 years I mean, because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And they
Pay an
sell
extra
it.
$500 a month. Who
Yep.
cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then are you ever selling these loans, or are you just hanging on to them and letting them pay off?
So we wrap everything that we do. And so you said something about subject to. We still do a lot of subject to deals because the fact is that there's a lot of homes out there with good interest rates on them. We do a lot of seller financing deals.
Sure.
And so but the difference is this. There's teachers out there right now in the sub two world that are teaching, go after low equity homes and go after the realtors and go after all that. And at the end of the day, and I am not bad mouthing realtors at all. I do a ton of business with realtors, but you got to educate your realtor on how to present to the seller. You got to educate their broker. Somebody's going to put a kink in the deal somewhere, and it's just more hassle than it's worth. So what I tell sellers, I'll buy your house.
Mhm.
You listed it with an agent. Good luck. I hope you get everything that you want for it. But if you don't sell it, come to me. We'll buy the house afterwards. But we'll save the agent's commission because usually that's the discount that I'm looking for.
Sure.
I'm not trying to steal your house from you, but that means a lot. And so, good luck. Go sell the house. If you don't sell it, come back to me. And so,
So you're getting the financing and then you're wrapping that financing you're getting right with this. So you're getting a bigger lender to give you a lower interest rate. You're then taking that with the new buyer and giving them a little bit higher, point or two higher, and you're making a difference. You're still paying a sub two, but I think what me and Nathan stress, and guys, if you're listening, listen closely. We're not upset with people who are wrapping their own debt. What we get
No.
frustrated with is when you wrap a third person's debt and create a new loan under Grandma Sue, who trusts you to make all her forward payments. And if you don't, or you get out of the game, or if something happens to your buyer, you're in tough waters. Where Shane did totally different is this is his own debt, and he's wrapping his own debt, right?
I'm responsible for that
Exactly.
debt. If my
Right.
buyer quits paying, that's my problem, not my.
Where other people, if
Yeah.
the buyer skips out, they just say, "Hey, it's not my debt. I know I took over, but hey, the seller has to care about it because they still."
Well, they're spending that money every single month, right?
Yep.
They do 2 or 3 deals and they're living on that income. And the fact is that what they don't realize is you can get somebody out of a house, you can keep that mortgage current and go resell the house to somebody else and get another down payment and go on. But a lot of people are operating at such thin margins that they don't have the ability to make those payments.
Yes.
And so they, change their phone
something
number
goes
and go
wrong.
do business somewhere else and leave people hanging. And what's going to happen is it's going to get us as investors legislated out of business.
You're right.
I've seen it happen. I was in Texas when they made lease options.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was
There's a
down there
reason.
when they did that.
There's a
And there's
reason why
a
they did it.
reason why. And it was one guy.
Yeah.
Was one guy. And so
So what Shane's saying
and
here,
also,
yeah,
they did contract for deeds.
yep.
Can't do those in Texas either.
Not anymore. Yeah.
So this is what we're stressing, guys. Wrapping your own debt, making you responsible. So if his buyer stops paying him, he's still on the full hook for the debt that's owed to his financer. Where people are
Yeah.
doing sub twos of someone else's debt, they're really not on the hook. They can walk away and kind of whatever, right? But Shane doing it. So when you're doing this kind of stuff, you don't need to have your own capital to do this. You just need to find a
No,
lender who's going to be willing to give you a debt, and you're able to charge 2, 3, 4 points more. That's it.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I
I
Simple
love
don't,
math.
that.
I don't, I don't use my credit. I don't use my cash, and I haven't for years.
Yeah.
Right?
There's no reason to. There's too much money out there. Um, there's
So
too many people with these down payments and that need this service, and so there's you can have as much business as you want.
Mhm.
I'm seeing the YouTube and the podcast comments fill up with one major question. How do you find the lender who's willing to give you money at 4, 5, 6, 7% so you can leverage it up? How do you find that person for so if someone's listening and saying, I can't borrow money at 6%, what would you suggest for them to do?
I would say there's some secret sauce in there, right?
Mhm.
You gotta pay some dues to be able to get that kind of information, and that's why I sell the course
Yeah.
and teach people how to do this.
Yeah.
But no, that's not the hardest part of this deal at all.
Mm.
It's really easy.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's
That's great.
so again, we'll put his stuff in the information below. Feel free to reach out to Shane. We've had a couple talks with him. He's a great guy, old school man, right? With really, really
Yeah.
good knowledge.
Solid. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're if you can encourage him to get down to DME, he'll be down there as well. So he'll be down there at DME
Yeah.
in Nashville, hanging out with us, talking, shaking hands, and whatnot. So, Nathan, why don't you ask our famous last question and see how he
Yeah, man, it's
responds?
we love it when we get people with this much experience because
Yeah.
when you've seen so many different market cycles and you've seen all these different strategies and everything else, it just lends to a perspective that a newbie's not going to have. So we're really glad that you're here, Shane, and now we're curious with your history, with your background, with everything that you've done, and with what you're involved in right now. What's your crystal ball? What do you see coming up in the next 12, 24 months? As far as like what's going to be the best real estate strategy? How's how are things going to shake out here? What are we looking at?
Well, I'm biased. I think the best real estate strategy is the reverse wrap.
Yeah,
But I am biased, but it just simplifies everything. If you want to work
sure.
60, 70 hours a week, go do some, wholesaling or the other strategies, but this one will give you a life as well as making money. But I believe that during the crash, we had a shortage of new homes being built. The
Hmm.
population has done nothing but grow, and we had a few good years there from say 2013 to 2020 roughly,
Yep.
uh, and so building kind of got back on track. But I think from a global perspective, and I say global, I mean United States, I believe we've got a housing shortage. I
Mm.
believe that lenders are still tight on lending to builders. Yeah,
Hmm.
there's some institutional money out there for that, but I think that there's definitely a housing shortage. I don't like the trends like tiny homes and different things like that. I just don't
Mm.
see that as sustainable. That's a personal
Hmm.
thing. But I think interest rates are going to decrease. I definitely don't want to get political, but I think things are going to change at the Fed here in the coming few months. And I just see the economy making a turn for the better. I think we're in a
Woo-wee.
short term, I think there's some people hurting right now with some
Yes.
Hmm.
high house payments that got in too much house. And I think that if there's not buyers out there, I would recommend them finding somebody that's been doing sub two for a long time and getting their credit, because that's a real thing. You get
Yes.
Yeah.
behind on those mortgage payments, you get a foreclosure, you're
Oh,
going to pay for a while. But
Yeah.
if you come across somebody that's been doing sub two for a long time and not missed payments, I've done probably a couple hundred of those deals and I've never missed a payment on a single house.
Yeah.
A year of on-time payments is going to do dramatic
yep.
things for their credit as long
Yep.
as they're maintaining the other sides of it. And they may not be able to live in their house, but we can fix that problem. We can get into a smaller house. A lot of times we can help them with the equity. So I personally see things, our youth, it's like my kids. My kids can't afford to buy a home and they make good money.
Hmm.
But um, but the interest rates and the price of homes it's just crazy.
Mhm.
And right, Nathan, you're in
Canada.
Canada, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know, I don't know details, but I've heard that, Canada's like second on the list in the world for home affordability issues.
Mm,
Very expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough.
And so, and there's regions of the US that are like that. I
yep.
mean, Colorado,
Yeah.
Utah, California,
Sure.
certain states. I mean, my son leased a home that was built in the 50s,
Mhm.
a 3 bedroom, 1 bath home with a 1 car garage, little wood frame house.
Yeah.
And it was near the university in Denver. $550,000.
Yeah.
Now the rent on it was only 2 grand,
Yeah.
but $550,000. How can a couple afford that?
Yeah.
And I've been saying this for a while.
Yeah.
If you take a median income in any geographic location and you apply a DTI rates to that, and then you look at the median income of homes in that geographic location, it doesn't add up. Something's not right.
You're right.
Right.
And so it takes dual family incomes to be able to pay for these homes. A lot of times they have ADUs in the backyard and things like that. And
Mhm.
something's got to change.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to have to start with interest rates. And I think the current administration recognizes that. And I think rates are going to decrease. But what it's also going to spur is, because we've got a housing shortage, is another boom in real estate prices.
Wow.
And that I just don't, something's got to break sometime.
That's
Mhm.
awesome.
And
Interesting.
Shane,
Interesting. Great.
I mean, you spoke from factual, historical knowledge, right? We all talk crystal balls, which we all don't know. But based on what you've experienced and what you've seen in the cycles you've been through, you get a good feeling, right? We've been calling since 2020 for something to happen, and it hasn't happened. And I think COVID kind of pushed a lot of stuff off, but it's due for something to change. And I agree with you. So, well, Shane, thank you so much, man. It is a
Yeah.
pleasure having you on. We'll see
guys,
you
it was a
down.
pleasure being on.
We'll see you down at DME, guys. Again, his information is below. Make sure you reach out to him. He is an awesome guy, awesome information, real life guy, does the business. This isn't just a teaching thing. This is him giving back to his people. Who he learned from before. He's now passing it down for everyone else. So, well, everyone, me and Nathan will see you soon. Hope all is well. Make sure you check out the AI mastermind we got in the DME, and we'll see everyone
Yeah.
soon.
Get involved.
Take
Well,
care.
David and Nathan, thank you guys very much. I enjoyed the afternoon and look forward to doing it again sometime.